How do you know if you are training your pelvic floor when you're pregnant? Or do you actually have one? I'm going to show you today 5 top tips, 5 ways that you can really know that you're training your pelvic floor. You don't need any equipment. You don't need to have ever done Pilates before. You don't even need to know where your pelvic floor is. My name is Karen and I've been teaching Pilates for over 15 years in Epping and all over London. And I've got 2 children of my own that I pushed out and I have lived to tell the tale. You are about to consider pushing out something like this. I mean, this is just the head through this. So I'm going to start with 5 ways that you know that you're working your pelvic floor. So number 1 is the lift test. Now, not a lift as in something you're going to go up in, but something that you're going to lift up against. To really know if you're working your pelvic floor, some kind of feedback is really useful. So I'm going to suggest, having said you don't need equipment, all you need is a towel or a blanket that you can roll up like a sausage. Can you see that? We're going to take this and I'm going to sit on it. Can you see that? I am straddling it as if I were riding a horse. And then because you do that every day. Anyway, I don't. We're going to just rock gently forwards and backwards on that towel until you feel that your vagina, the opening of your vagina is central. Yes, so you're not on the front on the pubic bone, you're not on the back on your tailbone, you're in the middle. It's really helpful to have your feet flat on the floor. And then all I want you to do is lift away from that towel or that blanket. And can you tell now, because you've actually got something to lift against, you've got something to touch or something that your outside of your vagina can touch, you can just lift up and then gently release. If you're quite heavily pregnant at this point, you may get a nice little bit of feedback just where your lift goes all the way up to your cervix and baby's like, stop squeezing my head. So you're gonna just lift up away from the blanket or towel. That is the lift test. Test number 2, the breath test. Now I have played the trumpet since I was 9 years old. That is a very long time ago. So I know all about diaphragms. If you have been perhaps a singer or a wind instrument player yourself, you may also know this. When your diaphragm lifts, so when you breathe out, your diaphragm lifts and your pelvic floor lifts with it. So if, again, you're seated nice and comfortably on your chair, you could do this standing as well. What I want you to do is just let your finger come in front here. We're going to breathe in so your ribs open. And it's a slow out breath. And as your diaphragm lifts and it's slow and controlled, you're using those muscles, those lovely breathing exercises, so the pelvic floor lifts up. Equally, you could sing. So you could be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Did I mention that I was a trumpeter? So anything where it's a controlled out breath, you're using that diaphragm and the pelvic floor is lifting. And you could add to that same lift. So do the towel we did for the lift test. Sit on the towel, do the breath, double whammy, pelvic floor is working. Number 3 is the squat test. Put very simply, when you squat down, your pelvic floor works. If it didn't, when you squatted down, everything would come out. So you can feel as you're doing this, as you squat down, so we're going to send your bottom backwards, you've got that sense of lift. So your pelvic floor has to work when you squat. I don't want to go into detail right now, but it's all connected to your thighs, your bottom, your core, your breath, everything is working together. So if you just use your in-breath to come down and breathe out to lift up. Again, you've got an extra, you've got the squatting, so you've got the coming down, pelvic floor working, and then as you lift up, use your out breath, diaphragm, out breath, pelvic floor is working. You don't necessarily have to consciously think, squeeze the pelvic floor, because when you're squatting, it is working. And number 4 is the jump test or the hop test. Now, if you're heavily pregnant, I wouldn't advise you start jumping around manically, but if you just bring your feet underneath your hips and you could just lift the heels up off the floor and jump, that's providing some impact on the pelvic floor. You could also do this as a little, I call this a joglet, It's a nice kind of cute way of talking about a little bitty jog really. Your heels come off the floor, the toes stay down, you're getting that impact on the pelvic floor. And I'm sure you can probably make the connection that walking, kind of brisk walking, marching up a hill is going to really get that pelvic floor working. So you're thinking impact. If you are doing that consistently and practicing that, your pelvic floor, I promise you, is working as you walk around. And number 5 is a squeeze. Put very simply, if you squeeze those thighs together, the squeeze and the connection through the insides of your thighs will get your pelvic floor working. It kind of starts that connection going. Add to that your out breath. So breathe in here, breathe out, squeeze your thighs together, breathe in, release, breathe out, squeeze your thighs together. And you're going to be getting your pelvic floor working then too. So there we have it, 5 ways of knowing that you're working your pelvic floor muscles, knowing that they exist when you're pregnant. So that was the lift, we used the towel, we had the breath, we had the squat, we had the jump, and then finally we had that squeeze. Now, if that all seems like a little bit too much for you to remember to do on your own, then why not just jump into a class? I teach classes weekly and we always do the pelvic floor work, and I can send you some little reminders of pelvic floor work to do during the week. My name's Karen. It's been great to have you here. Do pop me a question down below, or even just book in for a quick cuppa with me if you've got anything else that you need to talk about. You take care.